Army captain indicted in Taraba police killings. Investigations reveal more than 100 phone chats between Army captain and wanted kidnapper. National Association of Nigerian Students demands compensation for tragedy victims of Abuja Tafawa Balewa University. International news. Hong Kong chief executive says continued chaos and violence is driving the city into deep abyss. And in sport, Eaglets begin camping program for FIFA Under-17 World Cup finals.
This is ANN News.
I am Olajumoke Olatunji. The Nigeria police says it has identified the army captain who allegedly ordered soldiers to attack and kill police operators attached to the Inspector General of Police Special Intelligence Response Team at the security checkpoint along the Ibi-Jalingo Expressway in Taraba State. Defense headquarters reveals that within the month of August and July, there were more than 100 phone chats between the army captain and the wanted kidnapper, Alhaji Hamisu Bala, also known as Wudume. The army captain was arrested alongside 5 other army personnel who had confessed to participating in the horrific killing of the 3 policemen and their 2 civilian agents. They also confessed to taking orders from the captain, who is their superior officer. The army captain is currently being interrogated at the defense headquarters, Abuja. The National Association of Nigerian Students, NANS, is asking for compensation for the students who died as a result of the collapsed bridge in Abuja Tafawa Balewa University. NANS has indicted the management of the university for the tragic collapse in which 3 students died. It is also asking for award of admissions and scholarships to qualified members among families of the deceased. The association's national president, Danielson Akpan, specifically charged the school management for negligence. Akpan says the Executive Council assessed the sites of the collapsed bridge and decided it gave way because of negligence on the part of the school management. The Students' Union government claims it had earlier drawn the attention of the school management to the state of the bridge. Akpan called on the management of Aktubu to tender unreserved written apology to the families of the victims of the bridge collapse. Chairman, Board of Trustees of the People's Democratic Party, Walid Jibrin, is aligning his thoughts with the federal government on the establishment of rural grazing area known as the RUGA program. Jibrin was speaking with journalists in Nasarawa on Sunday. He said the proposed settlement policy for herdsmen would promote peace and security in the country. Jibrin, who is also the Sarkin of Fulani in Nasarawa State, says the program would boost food security and improve the health and standard of living in rural communities. Jibrin says despite party differences, he supports the program because it does not play politics with bitterness. The Transmission Company of Nigeria has denied rumors that it has invested the more than $1.5 billion secured from the World Bank, another multilateral financing agency. The government-owned transmission company says the financing was raised for the expansion of the national power grid. The CCN explains that the Nigerian Electricity Transmission Project, which seeks to redress certain deficiency and operating constraints of the power transmission system, is financed by the World Bank for almost $500 million. TCN's Managing Director, Usman Mohammed, says the project is in 3 stages. 2 phases have passed pre-qualification stage, while the third is still on pre-qualification stage. Mohammed says the pre-qualification of the Northern Corridor project, being funded by the French Development Agency, is almost completed. The TCN boss says the only project procurement available is Abuja Transmission Project at almost $200 million. Once completed, it is expected to add 5 new substations in Abuja and a new supply route from Lafia to the nation's capital. The Senate is asking the federal government to divest to foreign investors its 40% stake in electricity distribution companies, DISCOs. Senate President Ahmed Lawan gave this advice in Abuja when he received the management team of the Transmission Company of Nigeria, led by its Managing Director, Usman Mohammed. Lawan says with the state of the nation's power sector, experts in the field should be given an opportunity to invest in it. The Senate President says it is not in the interest of the government to keep disbursing bailout funds to discos without visible commensurate improvements in power supply. He said the program should be carried out with a holistic picture of how power supply challenges would be resolved once and for all. Lawan also expressed displeasure with a report on supervisory control and data acquisition contracts awarded 3 times in the past without success. And President Buhari has ordered the Central Bank of Nigeria not to give money to anybody for food importation. It says the country has sufficient food for its citizens. The president says if that is done, foreign reserve will be conserved and utilized strictly for diversification of the economy and not for encouraging more dependence on foreign food import bills. The president said this when he hosted All Progressives Congress Governors to Eid Kabir lunch at his country home in Daura. He emphasized that some states like Kebbi, Ogun State, Lagos, Jigawa, Ebonyi, and Kano had already taken advantage of the federal government's policy on agriculture with huge returns in rice farming. He promised to thoroughly guide the incoming ministers on how best to meet with the expectation of Nigerians. Coming up, African stories. United Nations reports surging deaths of charged soldiers in Mali as violence worsens. And later, international news. Hong Kong demonstrations, violence taking toll.
You are watching ANN.
Dear Mommy, you went out that night with the baby in your tummy, but you did not come back. The baby is very fine and she eats and sleeps a lot. Everyone says that you are in a better place, but I miss you so much. I keep asking them, where is the better place? But nobody answers me. Auntie Kemi just hugs me and says, go and play. Mommy, I miss you. Please, when are you coming home?
I still do miss you, Mom. And in honor of your memory, I'm a doctor today working with the MTN Foundation to save mothers and children every day.
Ending mother and child mortality in Nigeria is dear to us. We will keep strengthening this most important bond just for you.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. Now to African stories. A new report by the United Nations Children's Agency, UNICEF, says twice as many children in Mali have been killed in the first half of this year than in all of 2018. The report also says more than 150 were killed between January and the end of June. The Peace and Reconciliation Agreement reached in 2015 has basically collapsed. Several rebel groups affiliated with a loose coalition of militias have failed to respect the provisions of the agreement. UNICEF says recruitment of children into armed groups has doubled in comparison to the same period last year. The agency warns that extreme violence causes debilitating long-term trauma in young people. UN's independent human rights expert on Mali said in his last report that children's rights violations were underreported. He also voiced concerns about a lack of protection for victims and witnesses. At least 37 persons have been killed in fresh fighting between rival ethnic groups in Chad. President Idris Deby says the violence broke out over 3 days in the eastern province of Wadi, a strategic area on the border with Sudan. The president said at a press conference marking the country's independence, the intercommunal conflict has become a national concern. He said the country was witnessing a terrible phenomenon. Eastern Chad is in the grip of a cycle of violence between nomadic camel herders, many from the Zagawa ethnic group from which Deby hails, and sedentary farmers from the Wadian community. A local charity reports the latest fighting erupted last week in the village of Hamra after a rancher was killed. One hospital source told French news agency the death toll was as high as 44. Cameroon has instructed its military to be on the alert as Equatorial Guinea says it is building a border wall to stop Cameroonians and West Africans from illegally entering its territory. Equatorial Guinea's announcement comes as officials of the Central African Economic and Monetary Community, a regional economic, are encouraging the free movement of people and goods to boost economic growth in the region. Equatorial Guinea is a member. When Equatorial Guinea says it was building the wall and erected milestones on the border near the Cameroon town of Kiosi, Cameroon Army Chief Lieutenant General Jean-Claude Mecca visited the border. Mecca said he was told the neighboring state was not respecting territorial limits and was encroaching on Cameroon land. He said the Cameroonian army would not tolerate any unlawful intrusion. More than 100 migrants from Togo, Burkina Faso, Nigeria, and Benin on their way to Equatorial Guinea and Gabon are currently stranded in Cameroon after they were rescued from the capsizing vessel in the Atlantic Ocean. Ugandan health officials say more than 1 million persons have been infected with malaria in the country in the last 2 months. The health ministry blames climate change partly for the rapid rise. The ministry says the disease is now showing up in regions that were previously malaria-free. Officials say this time of year is normally a peak malaria season, but prolonged June rain seems to have created an even more fertile breeding environment for the mosquitoes that transmit the infectious disease. A health ministry statement says there has been a 40% increase in cases over the same period last year. The UN says there have been nearly 6 million cases since January, and more than 1,800 persons have been killed by the disease this year. The Ugandan Health Ministry says 1 million people have had malaria in the past 2 months. When we return, international news. Hong Kong demonstrations, violence taking toll. And later, sports. Golden Eaglets begin camping activities for FIFA Under-17 World Cup finals.
You are watching ANN.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In international stories, flight night at Hong Kong airport was marred by chaos and violence. The unrelenting massive demonstrations continued as hundreds of flights were cancelled at the city's airport, one of the busiest in the world. Chinese top officials are accusing U.S. congressmen of backstage manipulation of the riot. Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, says the violence is pushing Hong Kong into deep abyss. Reporter Liu Yang is there.
Escalation in violence has challenged national sovereignty and the authority of the Hong Kong police. On Monday, the Hong Kong and the Macau Affairs Office of the State Council strongly condemned the crimes and says it's beginning to show initial signs of terrorism. Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam held back in tears at a briefing on Tuesday, saying Hong Kong is severely damaged and will take a long time to recover.
Take a minute to think. Look at our city, our home. Do you all want to see it pushed into an abyss? What we must do now is resist violence, uphold the rule of law, and restore social order.
Lam says the violence will push Hong Kong down a path of no return. As a society, there has become insecure, unstable, and violent.
The violence is damaging to Hong Kong's rule of law. This is what we are most concerned about. The rule of law is the most important of Hong Kong's core values. If it is violated, many other areas of society also will be affected.
As one of the busiest transport hubs in the world, illegal assembly has paralyzed the Hong Kong International Airport. A one-day stoppage in activity means at least 200,000 fewer passengers and a drop in cargo goods of some 13,000 tons. Trade and logistics are the city's pillar industries. The airport administration itself loses 20 million Hong Kong dollars a day.
I'm supposed to be going to New Zealand today, to Auckland, but my flight is cancelled, so I can't get there. So I'm trying to find a hotel. Yeah, well, I have to be at work the next day, so it affects me.
I want to go to my country. I cannot leave the flight that cancelled. I feel embarrassed, confused. It's not really good, not really good.
From 9th of August to the 12th, police say they arrested 149 people on charges including illegal assembly, assaulting police and obstructing official duties. Experts say Hong Kong has reached a critical juncture and that all those who care about its future should step up firmly to stop the violence and restore order. As many tourists pour into cities in the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong's usual summer tourism boom has faced a downhill slide, with unemployment and economic hardships described by some as worse than the 2003 SARS outbreak. According to statistics by the Hong Kong tourism labor unions, earnings by local tourism industry practitioners have slumped 80% in the last 2 months. More than 10% of practitioners interviewed say they earned nothing.
U.S. President Donald Trump has bowed to some pressure from the business sector on the series of tariffs being imposed on Chinese imports. He has delayed the latest round of tariffs as many American businesses now groan under the weight of the existing tariffs that have negatively affected their bottom line. It is not clear for how long Trump would delay the new round of tariffs.
Possible progress in the trade war between China and the United States as the U.S. delays tariffs for some items and even removes others from the tariff list altogether. The U.S. Trade Representative had originally included some items, but they will now be removed. For, quote, health, safety, and national security reasons, the tariffs were supposed to go into effect on September 1st. The United States also says it will delay tariffs on other items, including cell phones, laptop computers, and clothing, until December 15th. The USTR's announcement came after talks between Chinese and U.S. officials. Vice Premier Liu He and Commerce Minister Zhong Shan, who spoke over the phone with their U.S. counterparts, Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin and Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer, lodged a solemn protest against the now delayed U.S. tariffs. Also joining the call, the President of the People's Bank of China, Yi Gang, and the Vice Chairman of the government agency, the National Development and Reform Commission, Ning Jizhe. The two sides have agreed to speak again in 2 weeks.
The overflow of guns in Iraq is making it difficult to maintain stability in the country's public order. Shootings and armed crimes are not uncommon. In some areas where GNGs are active, gunshots can be heard even during the day. Iraq's Ministry of Interior is drawing up new weapons regulations that will severely limit the number of institutions and individuals who can apply to carry guns. Reporter Fu Tianri has the story.
This weapons store in Baghdad has all kinds of guns for sale. Currently, the legal management of weapons still allows citizens to buy light automatic weapons.
The current weapon management system in Iraq now states that if a citizen feels substantially threatened, he could file an application to buy a gun. So actually, a lot of Iraqi people bought at least one gun to protect their families from ISIL.
Iraqi people like to have guns with them. As long as the customers have the permits from the Interior Ministry's office, we can sell them these weapons.
Aside from approved public channels, there are other sources, some of them dating back to the Iraq War.
The weapons business has been quite common since 2003, when a lot of Iraqi military units were dismantled and people grabbed weapons to sell to others.
These weapons have made some criminal acts easier, like murder and armed robbery. Tribal conflicts became even more violent. In some gang areas, gunshots can be heard during the daytime. Even for those who keep guns only for self-defense, weapons in the home pose a risk to the family.
I have specifically told a lot of people to keep the weapons away from children, but there are still a lot of accidents. There are no good solutions now.
The Iraqi Ministry of Interior is planning to announce a new version of the weapons control mechanism, applying strict limitations on gun possession qualifications. At the same time, the government will also remove weapons from civilians.
Weapons are virtually available to everyone, so you can imagine the difficulty. But we must establish this mechanism at the national level.
ISIL is no longer an imminent threat, and stability is a major issue for Iraqi society now. The new weapons control mechanism is expected to achieve a balance between the allocation of weapons to military forces and removing them from civilians, raising the post-war security to the next level.
Up next, sports. Golden Eaglets begin camping activities for FIFA Under-17 World Cup finals. Please stay with us.
You are watching ANN.
Whether in your house, at your office, on your phone or online, we are there. We have the facts behind the headlines. We cut to the chase with the news you really need. We cover every angle. We are the bigger, better news network. We are African News Network. ANN. Watch ANN News on MITV from a truly African spirit.
Welcome back. This is ANN News. In sport, five-time champions Golden Eaglets are in camp for FIFA Under-17 World Cup finals taking place in Brazil in October. The team picked a ticket to the championship after finishing in the top 4 at the African Under-17 Cup of Nations in Tanzania earlier this year. Head coach Man Garba has called up 52 players for camping activities. The Golden Eaglets also triumphed at the 1985, 1993, 2007 and 2015 championships in China, Japan, Korea Republic and Chile. FIFA has asked the 54 member associations of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, to sign a one-page media rights mandate that gives the World Football Body an irrevocable mandate to implement a central plan to market and commercialize media rights for FIFA African qualifiers for 2022 and 2026. FIFA says all net revenues generated through the centrally marketed media rights will be fully distributed among member associations of FIFA and CAF. Football enthusiasts say FIFA's proposal is likely to face objections from major African TV markets like Cameroon, South Africa, Egypt, Morocco and Algeria, where they would certainly make more money from selling their World Cup qualifying rights individually. That is ANN News this evening. Thank you for joining us. For details on these and other breaking stories, visit our website, annafrica.news. Conversation continues on our social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at ANN Africa TV. I am Olajumoke Olatunji. Have a pleasant evening.